building the business turns you into a different kind of human being.
Realize that failure is a part of the journey.
I think there's hope out there for all of us.
They say procrastination be the assassination of destinations. That's why we out here grinding with no association with haters and them other crabs trying to put us down. Pest badges in the house, boy, don't clown. Just keep your eyes on the prize, ain't no giving up. You can do whatever you dream of. Just keep your eyes on the prize, ain't no giving up.
Welcome back to another episode of Pest Control Millionaire. I don't even know what episode we're on. I know we're tracking 200 here shortly, so we're getting there. But really excited for this one. We were just chatting shortly, and I was like, we have to stop talking. Let's just hit record. We got Brandon Sizemore. He's with for the founder of Pest Control. They got 4 locations. Louisville is HQ. I think we'll probably have a lot in common, a lot to chat about. Really cool background story that we were just chatting about. But Brandon, I know we've been working on this I've been working on you for a couple of months, I think. The messages here and there, we finally made it happen. But just welcome to the show, man.
Yeah, Jonas, thanks for having me for episode whatever this is.
I don't even know. Like, I could probably go look one. I think officially, like what's online. Let's see what it shows. I need a Jamie, like a Joe Rogan has. So 180 went out today, and I have 2 other in the queue. Plus, you're technically 183, I think.
Oh, well, that's awesome. I'm honored to be whatever. I finally made it on the show. I feel famous now, so it's.
You are famous.
Yes, this is gonna be great.
You're doing big things, and it's really, really cool. We don't know each other a whole lot yet. We're about to get to know each other. We've been going back and forth, see online, things like that. I just love the industry as a whole. I know you guys are super clean. I looked at a bunch of your pictures, checked your website. It looks really, really good. So good work there. But first question I always ask when we start this episode before we rewind the clock a little bit is, if you and I, sophomore or junior in high school, who's Brandon in high school?
I'm sure that's an interesting question for a lot of your listeners. Well, I guess I would say, so, I guess if it's okay with you, Jonas, I typically like to be pretty vulnerable in conversation. And so, for me, high school, for I think a lot of people is a big transitional time in their life. And for me, a lot of events happened as well, right? So in high school is when my parents, they split up. They went through a really nasty divorce. And it had an impact to me. I was the oldest of 4 kids, and I think it caused me to grow up a lot faster than I probably should have or wanted to. And we didn't come from a family that had, we struggled a bit financially, right? I think a lot of people from your podcast probably have even better rags to riches stories than I have, but we didn't. I don't want to over sensationalize and say we were super, below poverty or anything like that, but we didn't do great. We got a lot of help from our church. All the clothes that I wore were used clothing from thrift stores or garage sales, and probably clothes that my friends just gave me. And so for me, growing up in high school, when you're showing up in your friend's clothing the next day, it was embarrassing for me, right? So financial security became a pretty big deal, and I had to set some boundaries with my mom. There were a few times she'd bring home used underwear, like boxers and stuff. I'm like, Mom, I don't want to wear that. Can we draw an exception here? So financial security was something I was into. But I was a good student. I was kind of labeled as a fairly smart kid early on. I was a few grades advanced, especially within math. But I felt like in order to be a smart person in high school, you kind of had to create a persona or image that you weren't trying really hard. It had to come across pretty effortless. And so I probably created some bad habits where I tried to at least behave or act like I didn't care.
Gotcha.
But I was also trying out for the basketball team. I'm a big basketball guy, ran cross country as well. And if anything, I had to work hard, it was that, right? Like we had a really good basketball team, a really good basketball program, and I got cut a few times within, my freshman, sophomore year. And I really became like just a fanatic with just getting inside the gym. And when I say gym, I'm talking about playing basketball. I should have probably been lifting weights, but instead I was a gym rat, right? I was just playing all the time. But it really forced me to try at something to be the best I possibly could. I didn't have a natural talent. And so if anything, I tried really hard, it was that. And I eventually made the team and became, kind of a six-man of the year. So I really related to like the Knicks just winning the championship with Jalen Brunson, dude. He was just kind of told like he couldn't make it this whole time. And so it was really cool to see his story of what he's done even now. And I can certainly relate myself.
That's awesome. I love it. Yeah, my parents went through a divorce when I was 3. So I don't really remember it. And then my stepmom or my stepdad and my mom got divorced my senior year. So you're right. It just changed a lot of things.
Yeah, it changes. And I mean, it's, I don't want to turn this into a therapy session for you and you're going to start billing me. But, the reality is that my parents have been divorced several times, right? Both of them. And so it has an impact on how you view relationships and, certainly probably has an impact on me today. But I think where it's really helpful is if you can sort of overcome some of adversity, which I think a lot of your guests have, it can be pretty inspiring as well. So, kind of going back to my high school time, I wasn't like, I didn't fit into any particular group or anything. I would say I'm a bit of an introvert from that perspective. And it's funny because I didn't really know what that meant. People always would say, hey, if you're an introvert, you don't like people. And that never really fit who I was, right? I love people. I like talking to people. But what I don't do a great job at is small talk, sort of this lighthearted talking about the weather. And I think it probably had some impact to deal with the stuff that was happening at home, so when I'm, dealing with my family falling apart and things are just going in shambles and people want to talk about the weather, it just was hard for me. And so even today, I pride myself in digging deep and I'm not sure how, but even in high school, I was voted, best personality, which probably just my looks didn't help me any. So they kind of gave me a gift there. But the reality is like I said, I love talking with people. I love listening to their stories and kind of learning more about them and really getting to know them, but mostly at a deeper level.
That's cool. I probably know the answer to this because I know you went on a mission. Is this podcast, is that a challenge for you or are you past that point?
Jumping on the podcast here?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure I'm always, anytime I have to get up in front of people or, give a talk or a lesson or something, I'm sure just public speaking in general is always gonna, get on, get your nerves going a little bit. But outside of that, I mean, I certainly enjoy more of those intimate conversations, small group settings. I love talking about deeper conversation. I don't necessarily, I don't know if I could describe myself as an introvert in that way where I don't like to talk or like to get to know people. It's just, I like to do it more at a deeper level, right? Like talking about superficial things, just,
right.
I lose attention quickly, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that's just an entrepreneurship thing too. Like
probably. Yeah, that's probably true.
We're wired. Yeah. That's cool. Like you have a really cool story already. And then from there, assuming you graduate and then when you go on your mission.
Yeah. So, back then, when you served a mission, it was at 19 years old. It's now changed to 18. And so you typically, in my case, I went and did a year of college.
Gotcha.
And that was when I was first sort of introduced to the door-to-door scene. I didn't do door-to-door per se at that time. But it was becoming popular. This is kind of the mid 2000s. And to be honest with you, pest control wasn't like the sexy thing to go sell at that time.
Still is what I think. What I hear.
Well, it's definitely a lot sexier than it was even then. All of my friends were doing security, which now they call alarms, right? Which is you have you had companies like Apex and Pinnacle. Apex is now Vivint, right? And so they're all doing that. But it was still just getting started, right? I feel like it was just getting some traction. This is kind of early to mid 2000s. And then I basically spent my time just taking some generals and just preparing for my mission. It was kind of one of those weird bridge years where you're sort of looking forward to something, but you can't really progress in life. You just kind of have to live.
Is that why they changed that to 18?
I think that probably had a lot to do with
Yeah.
it. One,
It
just
makes sense to me
transitioning
logically, but I just
sooner.
curious.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was weird. I had a girl that I was dating at the time, and I thought would probably wait for me to get back from my mission. That didn't happen. It didn't work out the way that I had thought it would, and probably better for both of us in a lot of ways. We're both happily married now, but for me, like that year just transition, and I lived with probably 5 other guys that were like, probably 4 or 5 years older than I was. And so I learned a lot from them because I was kind of the young, 18-year-old staying up till 3 o'clock in the morning, and they had really disciplined habits. They'd all come back from their missions, and the mission definitely causes you to grow. Probably 10 years, in 2 years, you grow 10 is why you see a lot of these guys that are just really high caliber and really mature guys. So it wasn't until then I applied to serve a mission. I was hoping to go overseas, but as you know, early from this conversation, I got a letter that said I'm going to go serve in Wisconsin, which is your neck of the woods. And so I started up there. I started in Marquette, Michigan. My first baptism was a Methodist minister we baptized her in Lake Superior, actually. It was like 3 weeks in. So it was a really incredible experience. I met a lot of great guys that I lived with for 2 years. And so I'm familiar with the UP, your hometown, Escanaba, some of these other towns like Ishpeming, Nagani, Manistee.
Yeah. So like for all your listeners, like usually when people ask me where I live, I just say Green Bay because it's easier. Right down Escanaba, Michigan, like, oh yeah, that's by Detroit. I'm like, yeah, no, like 9 hours south or 9 hours north of there. So you ask, oh, you're from Green Bay? I'm like, no, I'm like 2 hours north. They're like, well, where? Like Escanaba? I'm like, actually, that's where I live. It's funny. And so yeah, Marquette is an hour north of us. We service there, so we have a lot of accounts there. Yeah, every Mastique's only 40 minutes from me. We're there a lot. Drive through there, go to the bridge. So yeah, it's just crazy that you know the area. It's pretty cool. And you knock here, which is cool.
Yeah, I probably knocked every door in Marquette, Michigan.
Well, it doesn't take you very long, does it? Hold up, quick pause. If you're on a pest control company or fertilization weed control company, you're not in our Facebook group, you're choosing the harder path. Every operator that's in there is skipping years of mistakes because people are actually sharing what's working right now. So stop trying to brute force your way through growth alone. Search Pest Control Millionaires on Facebook or click the link below. And now let's get back to it.
So our area in Marquette covered down to like Sawyer, Nagani area, then left or west of Ishpeming. But I remember when I first landed, we flew into Milwaukee, and it took us the whole day to drive up all the way to Marquette. And I'm just like, are we going to stop here ever? Right? Because you know what it's like. You drive on these roads and there's trees on each side that you can't see through. And it's beautiful in the fall, right? It looks like it's on fire in the fall, so it's gorgeous. But you're literally in the middle of nowhere, right? And I remember when I first started knocking, there were doors on the second story of people's homes. I remember being in Ishpeming, and I asked the person I was serving with, I said, hey, what are those doors for? And he's like, dude, it gets so much snow up here. We have to like be able to get out of our houses at these times. So I don't know how you do pest control up there. I'm sure it's amazing. And obviously you've made it work because you guys have grown like crazy, but it's definitely a different place being so I was a Youper for a few months.
That's awesome. What did you think of Lake Superior?
Lake Superior was awesome, dude. I felt like it was a bit chilly even on a warm day. I think I did this baptism in June or July, and you probably don't know this, but missionaries aren't able to swim. It was my only time ever to go into like a lake and go swimming. And so I kind of did a little trip and fell into the water on purpose and intentionally just to kind of get my fix for the next 2 years. But It was beautiful, man. It felt like, honestly, like, I've never seen a lake this big where it just looks like it's an ocean, right? It was incredible. It was massive. You're right.
But yeah, like as you know, like it's just not very big. You knock it in a pretty quick hurry. If you brought a team of 5 guys, you knock it in a couple days. It wouldn't take long. And so that's kind of obviously you can see where my struggle was. Like I feel like I was a pretty good operator. Have a lot of accounts here, but there's just nothing. There's nowhere to go. And so that's kind of obviously how I had to evolve. I lived here, got kids here, and Green Bay was the next closest place I could get to,
Yeah.
which is still 2 hours.
Yeah, and you're right. It's still a bit of ways from you, and it's probably not like big. Green Bay is interesting because it's not like the biggest city either.
The whole area is like 100,000, so it's not big at all.
Right.
People just know of it because they think it's bigger because the Packers are there.
Yes, that's right. It makes it feel a lot bigger than it is because that city's so fanatical about their sports team, right? They sort of design their grass and their flowers to kind of match the Green Bay Packers colors. Like the fire hydrants are all sort of painted the same Packers colors as well.
Yeah, I think the city of Green Bay population is like 100,000, and Lambeau holds 80,000.
Yeah, that's it. That's crazy. That's insane, right?
Like the whole town like congregates there. Like obviously it's packed inside, it's packed outside. All the restaurants, bars are packed.
Yeah. So what's interesting is we had a rule in there. We call it tracting, as missionaries, but it was knocking. You couldn't knock on Packers like you couldn't knock on those days because it wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah, no one's
People
home.
would be mad at you too.
Right. That's funny. I did not know that. But yeah, this is a crazy story. Like right off the rip, we got something in common. You've been to Marquette, Escanaba. Like, not a lot of people can say they've been here. So that's kind of cool. So then, from after your mission, I'm assuming you go to college and you probably get recruited. Is that what I'm assuming?
Yeah. So I got back from the mission, and quickly, folks are signing up to go sell alarms or security at the time, and I was getting recruiting lunches and calls and stuff and trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I had a few options to go sell with some friends, but I was also meeting my wife. We were quick to kind of get married, after dating each other for a year or so. And then because of her situation, she was actually graduating, because I was, she was a little bit ahead of me in school because I had done the mission thing. And she ended up was graduating from dental hygiene school. And so I wasn't able to do any sort of knocking until like later in the summer. And so I was going to go sell security with just a really small company. And so I showed up, and I was actually going to do this in Colorado, which is where I'm originally from. And I was living at home, which was probably a terrible mistake, right, to begin with. And so I had a few weeks just to go sell, and you can imagine just after a few weeks of trying to sell security, I didn't do great.
Close to home. Easy
I'm close to home. I wasn't getting any training because I came in super late. And honestly, Jonas, like I think for me too, I just had a hard time focusing on the sales process, right? It was my first like introduction to like a business, and I have an entrepreneurial sort of brain. And I was like already ready to start a security company before I even like sold an account, right? Which was just insane for me to think about, but that's how my brain was working at the time. And so it was really hard for me to focus on selling 1 or 2 accounts or 3 accounts a week. Like selling 3 or 5 was actually pretty good. For me, I was like, well, how can I build something? And so it was really hard for just a few weeks to really focus. And I still considered it like a failure, right? Where I didn't perform what I kind of expected, and always kind of carried that as a time where I sort of failed at this thing. Went back to school. I got into an accounting program at the school I went to, and it's a pretty highly rated program, and kind of requires all your time and energy and effort. Like your whole soul is dedicated to try to focus on it. And to be honest with you, door to door was very different back then than it is even today, where it would just felt kind of like a side gig for most people. It wasn't like a career for anyone. People weren't starting all their companies really, even in the mid 2000s. There were a few that were starting, but it's just like, hey, how can I make $20, $30,000 in a summer and make more than if I were to stay at home. That's how we viewed it back then. And so we kind of made fun of, like in my accounting program, at least, we kind of make fun of those guys that knock doors and became those sales bros. You know, they still are today. There's even more of them. And we kind of almost looked down on them because even the program I was in, it's like your guaranteed job offer rate was like 90% by the time that you were finished your junior year. And so I put all my energy into that and worked really hard just to get a job, because this is now 2008, 2009, the financial crisis hits. And I'm like, okay, I've got to put on this on hold for this thing about starting my own business, because I had this entrepreneurial desire. And I just need to make sure I have something to work, you know, have work, right? Because we weren't getting as many offers back then. And eventually just grinded, and I was able to get one offer from one of the big four firms. They're called Deloitte and Touche. And so I just took that, right? I was like, hey, I just need an offer. And that ended up taking my wife and I to Arizona. And that's where we really started my career. And that was probably about 2011, I want to say. And I had no idea, you know, I'd known some people that sold pest control. That was kind of my first introduction, but I didn't know like there was this service-based business thing that it even existed, right? And I remember my first week, I'm sitting down with these Arizona professionals. We're in training, we're in LA, and we're all around the table, and they're talking about their people that take care of their yards or their pools. They're like, hey, my cleaning lady this, my pool guy that, my landscaper, my pest control person. And I'm just like, are you guys all like freaking rich here? Because that was me for all of those things, right? If we need pest control, is like, go grab some raid. Like,
right.
Never heard of service-based businesses, right? But Arizona, they're really common. Almost everybody has like 4 or 5 of them, right? And that quickly became who we became soon, right? Like we ended up getting some service companies after a few months of living there, because like these people could do things way better, way faster than we could. And so we would hire cleaning people or pool people. And I thought it was awesome. I thought it was awesome to have like service companies that you can just trade money for, and they can do something way better than you could. And so it's kind of my first introduction to like service-based businesses. I guess, you know, fast forward from there, I actually became so focused. You know, accounting is at least at the big four, you're showing up at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. A busy season, you're there till 11 at night. There were a few nights where I slept at my office, you know, for 30 minutes. You know, I've worked a few 36-hour shifts. And, you know, it came to a point where I was like, hey, I'm going to keep pursuing this plan B option until I figure out what plan A is. And I would try all these little things like side hustles, right? I sold Amazon FBA for a while. Sold, you know, try to buy some homes, invest in real estate. And because I really wasn't putting all my energy and effort into one thing, they all seemed to just fizzle out, right? And so I wasn't super successful with those, or at least I didn't consider them successes. And it wasn't until later on where I was introduced, my friend, he was actually contacted by one of the owners of the Green Mango group, that you're probably familiar with. And he had like a small pool route of like 30 accounts or something. And one of them approached him, I think it was Dusty, and said, hey, you know, let's start a pool company. And they started a company called Pineapple Pools that was around for a few years. And I remember him pull me in the first time he wrapped his truck, and he's like, hey, I got to show you this. And he showed me this truck, and I'm just like, wow, this thing's pretty sexy. This thing looks really nice. And so that was his first truck that he wrapped. And they ended up having to wrap a ton of trucks because you have to do a lot more accounts with pools. And so you need a lot more trucks. And so that kind of got my wheels turning a little bit. I put that on ice for a few years. And I remember just one day I'm listening to a lot of audiobooks. My commute was like over an hour. And I was listening to Grant Cardone's 10X or something like that. What is that book called? And Grant, like him or love him, Grant Cardone's like not my favorite author by any means, but
Uncle G
this,
though. Yeah.
yeah, but
Very
this book was
motivational.
definitely, yeah, this has a sacred place in my heart because I was listening to it and it was just like, yeah, here's why I haven't been successful at some of these other things is I'm not giving it 10x effort, right? And so I just remember sitting in my car and engines turned off. I'm in the parking lot and I'm just like, dude, man, like I remember having the thought that just nobody was coming to rescue me. Nobody's going to come save me or try to be like, hey, Brandon, let's go partner and start a company, right? And I figured I had to go do that myself. If I was going to eventually pursue my plan A that I wanted to, that I had to go make something happen. And so that's what I did. I started reaching out to friends and people to see if they could partner. And I thought service-based business. I was originally going to start a pool business, but I eventually said, hey, I think pest control is probably a bit better of a business, and tapped a few friends and family and got rejected by several of them, and eventually found my business partner today, who was selling for Aptive at the time. He'd been doing that for 5 years, and just poked him on Facebook and just messaged him and say, hey, man, I know we don't know each other super well, but love to sit down and talk. He kind of pushed me off a little bit at first because he was having a baby. And eventually I was able to convince him to just come over to my house one night. We sat around the dinner table and we stayed up till like 12, 1 o'clock in the morning around my dinner table, just like, hey, are we going to do this? And we're probably both just shaking. And eventually he convinced me. He was like, hey, I wasn't planning on doing this, so it would be nice if I just had one more year to go sell, and let's go start this the next year later, and let's go do this right. And so that's what happened. We ended up starting in 2020 was when we got our first customer. I think I approached him at the end of 2018. And during that time, I was kind of putting some pieces. I wrapped a truck, took some video because I was like, dude, I don't want to lose this business partnership opportunity. And I had to keep him warm for a full year, right? And so I made like a video and took some pictures to kind of bring the concept to life. And then eventually we decided, hey, let's go get our first customer. And that wasn't here in Louisville, Kentucky, because his condition was that we couldn't start in Arizona. We couldn't start in California because of the saturation at the time.
Right. So did you move there?
At first, no. At first, we went out for the summer. And my wife started out as our CSR. I was like transitioning, trying to handle all the back office stuff. We hired a branch manager, and when I say I put everything into it, some people think it's easier when you have money to start something and vice versa, right? Like there's some challenges either way, right? So for us, for example, when you go bet the farm on something, like I mortgaged my house. Right.
There is no plan B at that point.
Yeah, I financed everything, and you have what feels like a lot to lose, right? It's if you don't have anything you put into it, like you don't have anything to lose. But I mortgaged my house. If this goes under, I lose my house potentially, right? So I financed everything. We bought a few trucks. We had a door-to-door team that we recruited in 2020. That was chaotic in and of itself. We lost half our team from what people couldn't predict as far as COVID. And so we went out with like 7 or 8 guys. And some of these 7 or 8 guys are killers in the industry today. I wish they would have stuck with us at Mint. I wish we had the financial backing to have convinced them to stick around. Some of these guys have created teams that are $10, $15 million teams. And I wish I could have paid them the money at the time to do that here at Mint. Unfortunately, I didn't have that at the time. But it was a great team. It was a close squad. Like I said, my wife was taking phone calls. I went and started trying to knock doors myself, try to train myself to do it. And slowly but surely, we've been able to sort of stumble along and grow.
That's awesome.
So that was kind of our first year. Was it here in Louisville? We put on probably $600,000 or $700,000 in revenue.
That's awesome. So how did it go your first year knocking doors personally?
Dude, I mean, I told you I'm an introvert, right? So my first
That's why I
door,
asked. I wrote down
the first door, man, I'm shaking in my boots.
about threw
Uh,
up.
oh yeah, right? Like the hardest door to
Mine was COVID too. Like it was during COVID.
yeah. And as you know, like when you haven't really developed the skill or anything, like it's pretty scary. My first day I actually did fairly well though. And maybe it was attributed to COVID. I went out for like a half day and sold 4 accounts. The next day I sold 7. So I was like, I didn't think it was any easier. I thought it was just like lucky, right? And so certainly had a lot of tough encounters as well. And I wasn't, that lucky throughout the rest of the summer, obviously, but no, it was a good transition and definitely had some negative days, some positive days, and I just had always told myself, hey, I'm need to be willing to do every single role in this business so that I can understand it. And it got to a point where we were putting on enough accounts that I had to go tech for some of our sales guys, right? So I got in the mint truck
It was
and
hard. Like for us, it was during COVID. It was really hard to hire.
exactly. That's why I had to do it, right? Because we had so many people because they're getting unemployment paychecks, and it's just like, honestly, I'm probably shouldn't say it here vocally, but we probably had to break some rules and stuff and convince people to work for us. We had to just pay people like, please, we'll give you a huge bonus later to work for us, down the road sort of thing. But you had to do whatever you could and break some laws when it came to door knocking, I'm sure, but anything to kind of keep the business thriving because there wasn't anybody paying me anything, right? I wasn't, I'd already left my job by the time that COVID hit. And so I was like, I had no other option. I had to make this thing work.
What was when you were knocking on the door? How was your community? Were they pretty receptive to you knocking? Did you get a lot of backlash down there?
The governor here in Louisville was fairly strict, so he took forever to open up.
Yeah, same with Michigan. That's how I ended up in Wisconsin.
Yeah, and so we knocked in southern Indiana. Yeah, southern Indiana as long as we possibly could, and again, so you would just get so many people, some who were receptive, but just some people who, the types that were wearing masks within their vehicles all by themselves types, you know what I mean? So they use that for every single reason to be super upset with you.
Yeah, I think, and then the next year in 2021, like the newest smoke screen was like, I'm in a meeting because everyone's still home. I'm in a meeting. I'm in a meeting. They got on their phone. Pretty soon their phone would be sliding in their pocket.
That's true. I
But
didn't think
that
about
was
that.
so
That is
fun.
totally true.
That's so fun. Those years were so great. Like some of the best times. Like so challenging, but so rewarding and fun. And yeah, I remember I bought a van, a Nissan. We still have it. One of our original van is a Nissan, whatever they are, NV200. But I bought it because it had a spotlight on it, so I could service at night. So I'm out there grinding, like no joke. You ask my guys, I would service like almost 30 jobs a day by myself, trying to keep up with
Oh my
a
gosh.
small team of 3 to 5, and they were just crushing. Couldn't hire like I had one other technician working with me. Um, I had the license, and then yeah, like I bought the spotlight, so it's like 10 o'clock at night, and I'm just grinding away, like just trying to get all these jobs done, and it worked out really good. I still have the spotlight; it's still pretty cool. So like just some of the best times. Like we talk about those days all the time. Like we had Airbnbs that we all slept together. It was like like 5 to 10 of us that were just it was like all the original guys that they're all still here today. So it's just really cool looking back in those days. Again, I was forced to go into a new market, forced to knock doors. I'd never done it before. It was brand new to me. I almost threw up, but luckily, I've said this in the podcast a million times. The lady's dog was allergic to wasps, and they had a ground wasp nest in the back. I was like selling whatever I could. I didn't care if I was selling fertilization weed control or pest control. I was more focused on the fertilization weed control side because that was my background. But the first door I knocked just happened to have a wasp nest underground, and I sold my first door that I ever knocked.
Dude, that's awesome.
And I was like, oh, that wasn't so bad. And then I think I sold again. It's probably similar to you, like 3 to 4 that day. Probably similar the second day, like 3 to 4, somewhere along there. And then like, I think my best day that summer was like 15, somewhere in there. And then I was like, I can do this, And then that's kind of how it started here. But I didn't have a team. I'd never knocked doors before. I didn't know anyone that knocked doors before, literally. And so like I didn't reach out. I have a friend who worked at Apter, but it was basically YouTube University the entire time, just trying to figure it out. I didn't even have contracts in place or agreements in place. I was just selling one times. I didn't care. I was just trying to get cash flow. That's just how it started.
Yeah, we probably made some pricing mistakes early on too, where we discounted it probably too much, and obviously contract values and pricing have changed in the last 4 or 5 years
Big time.
significantly, right? We've seen a lot of evolution happen in the space, and so it's almost, just getting started is kind of the biggest hurdle. I think you probably had some better luck than we have, particularly with partnering with door-to-door people. We've had a really tough time convincing sort of an equity model going forward, especially those people who are coming out of our area or our locations within Utah. I think there's just been a really bad taste or stigma about equity, people getting burned, L-tip models and things like that. People don't even understand what those are. And so we weren't able to keep some of those original guys, unfortunately, but we've just been able to make it work despite all the people that have told us no, which we've had a lot of, right? I think what I've learned mostly as a business owner is just go through as many no's as possible. And I think the doors teach you that, right? Like your success comes from hearing more no's.
Yeah, there's a really good book that's called Go for No. And it's literally what it talks about. Like, but yeah, and I didn't know, again, I don't need to repeat myself, but I didn't know door to door. All my guys didn't come from the space. They had no idea what it was. Now, of course, they do now. It's a huge industry. Once you're in it, like you're in it. And with social media, like it's got bigger and bigger. So they don't now, but back then we had no idea. We were just ripping, like 5 guys knocking doors in the Midwest. I had no clue what they were doing. Well, we were damn good though.
That's
We were good.
incredibly, that's special. So you guys were just literally just going online and trying to find door approaches and
Yeah, and then finally I reached out to Sam Taggart, reached out to Lenny. They both emailed me back the next week. I was like in October, somewhere in there, September, October. One of Sam's has an event. He said, "Dude, just come out here." Went out there. Like you could ask Sam today. He's like, I think I still have the sticky note upstairs. Or it's like a small like ring binder, writing down pricing for me. He's this quiet guy sitting in the back. I wasn't ever quiet, but I was just listening. Like I was consumed. He's sitting in the back by myself and just taking down notes as much as I could. Got the model. I was like, oh, this is recurring. That's cool, And I had a different business before. It was like lawn mowing, fertilization weed control. So I got the recurring model. Like I figured, like I knew what to do. And he was just writing down pricing, and he's like, "Don't do this, don't do that. Go do this, go do that." And I just literally did what he told me to do, and that's kind of how I learned. And then we had met Parker Langeveld.
Okay, yeah.
And Parker came out to Green Bay with us and trained with us for like 3 days. And then that's the first time I seen like someone who was just an absolute monster on the doors. And then he came back out with us a couple more times, and that's who really trained us in really, really well. And then, yeah, we just kind of ran with it from there, So I did have some learning. I did have a learning curve after that, but originally it was just YouTube University. I think it's the end of 2020. I think end of 2020 is when I actually learned how to do it.
Mm-hmm. You probably know this better than most, but you almost feel like door to door and pest control are separate businesses.
Oh, hands down, they have to be. Yeah.
Right. Like they're almost run very differently. You probably market those very differently. And I mean, for me, I have a real appreciation for pest control, right? Like, a lot of these PCOs and stuff. And so that's why I've loved like what you and like Alan Draper are creating with spaces like this, because I think it does help create a community for those guys. And, I think I mentioned this to Alan not too long ago, where it's just like, some of the culture that's created in the door-to-door space can be really toxic, in my opinion. And so I have a certain, distaste for it. But you definitely have to have some level of thick skin to be in that space for sure.
Yeah. How challenging was it for you on the operational side?
To deal with door to door.
No, just like learning pest control, learning the ops side.
Yeah, there have been some challenges, and it isn't until more recent where I've been able to focus. So I've typically operated as like a CFO role with probably 80% of my time going into door to door, right? I just play sort of backup to my business partner, was our president of sales, who's now our chief revenue officer, Mitch Allred. And we've kind of tag team that, right? It isn't until more recent, just within the last month or so, where I've shifted over to the operational side and I've taken on the COO seat. So now I have all the branch managers who report into me. We kind of split some of our, like the CSR team kind of goes into him. But I handle all the marketing and operations now, and still maintain the finance back office support as well. And so that has been pretty interesting, because when I first got into this space, I would get conflicting messages. For example, I always heard that this was sort of a relationship-based business. But then it came to time when, spending time with customers or communicating with them, the branch managers would be like, well, no, we don't want to go inside, right, and do the inside treatments. And I'm like, well, most people aren't even home. And I'm like, well, how are you building relationships with people when they're not even home then? And so I had to learn, and I'm still learning, right? Like, how do you connect with your customers without necessarily them seeing you once a quarter? Like, what kind of relationship can you really build in that time? And so ultimately, it got my wheels spinning. This is probably 3 or 4 years ago, and I'm actually excited to be implementing some techniques today. I realized that, I guess going back to my Arizona days when I've been a customer, there were a few things that I felt like I valued with my service-based businesses or companies that I worked with, right? And by far was great communication, right? If I felt like the person taking care of my home cared about it as much as I did, then we're good, right? If I can feel like they were on top of that service issue, then we're on the same page, right? But if I had to be proactive and constantly remind them to take care of my home, that's when there was disconnect. I remember having a landscaper once, and he was taking care of our yard, and he was doing a decent job, but then all of a sudden we got like a dead spot within our front yard. And I'm like, man, something's off with the sprinkler system or something. So I called the landscaper, and he said, hey, yeah, you guys have a couple broken sprinkler heads. And I'm like, well, why didn't you tell us? Right now we've got dead grass, and you could have just warned us like 3 weeks ago, 3 months ago, right? And he's like, well, I didn't know if you want me to take care of it. And I'm like, well, we would have paid you more just to take care of the thing. You just got to let us know, right? And I think sometimes we think we're bugging our customers, but the reality is they just want to know that you got it, right? Like, pest control needs, your concerns about pests are now our concerns, right? And so you don't want to replace one issue with another issue by creating a separate problem for them, right? So if you leave the gate open, for example, you've got a problem. The dog gets out, you got a huge problem. And so we've had to sort of change our whole concept of what we think about a customer experience. And we're in the process of doing that. We're reading a book right now. I think it's called Excellence Wins. And we're just designing all of our trainings off of this book. It's I'm trying to remember the guy's name. He's a German guy, Schultz, I think, or Horst Schultz or something like that. And his whole focus, he's the guy that basically is responsible for the reputation for the Ritz-Carlton.
Right.
He's also attributed with being the consultant for with Chick-fil-A when they came up with the sort of the My Pleasure slogan, right? And you hear that all over the industry. Like, everyone wants to be the Chick-fil-A of pest control, right? How many times have you heard that phrase? A lot, right? And our mindset is, how do we change our perception of what creating a good customer experience looks like? And so that's everything that we're focused on right now with our team. It's one thing to get rid of the bugs, but how do you provide an experience that customers remember you by. And so that was definitely a challenge, and it's been a challenge, but now we're starting to streamline it, and it's actually starting to come full circle. And I think I'm really excited with how our team's starting to shape up right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of good books around this too. There's like off the top of my head, there's like Disney You. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Never Lose a Customer Again by Joy Coleman. That was good. I think it's Exceptional Experience or something like that is another good one. I just got read that one recently too. This is really good. Yeah, there's some really good books around that customer experience. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Disney, because that was when I was talking about building a relationship with customers. Disney is one of the best to ever do this. Right? Disney's not in your home, but they're in your home, right? Like, you know, you don't have Walt Disney or you don't even know who the CEO is, but you know they've been able to create characters, and that's how they've done it, right? Is they've created characters that you can interact with, and they ultimately have a relationship that you build. I mean, you go to Disneyland, dude, you're gonna have like one, you don't even see that many kids there. You see adults who are dressed up as characters, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Like, they create fanatical fans. They've done an amazing job at it. Regardless of what you think about them, they've done an amazing job at creating a relationship with their customer base.
I agree. The other one that I read recently was The Effortless Experience.
Okay.
Really good too. So when I read books, I'm weird like this. I'll read like 5 or 6 books on one topic.
Oh yeah.
Then I'll go to the next
That's good.
topic. Yeah. Because there's so many different perspectives from different people. So I try to take all those concepts that I read from previous 4 or 5 books and then podcasts around that topic, and try to take a little bit of everything and build our own, you know. So
I think that's great, right? What you just said there is really, really powerful, Jonas, because I think sometimes people just take one book and they just build their whole company around that book, like Traction, for example. Yeah, it's a phenomenal book, right? But do you have to have your business operate exactly like Traction says in the book? I don't think so.
we had to modify it for what worked for us, you know. But definitely some really good concepts around there.
Right.
There's another book called Scaling Up. It's like another model of EOS, like the bits and pieces of that too, you know. So yeah, I try to just take the best of all worlds.
Yeah. Take 1 or 2 bullet points away from them. I think that's a valuable thing you can take from a book.
Yeah.
But I mean, if I were to run
Just one golden nugget, you know, from one book is all I'm looking for.
one golden nugget, exactly. But I mean, if I were to run my family like Traction, for example, and tell my wife she's going to be the integrator, I'm going to be the visionary, think how that's going to go.
It's not very good.
It's not going to go great.
The idea is you got to do everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would not fly.
Yeah.
Maybe I should have listened to that quote sooner. Just kidding. So you're like, I got a question for you because I was thinking about this too that I wrote down. Coming from a financial background, accounting background, then going into the door-to-door space where it gets expensive. How did you wrap your brain around all that to make it make sense for you?
Yeah, I know in some ways I probably made some mistakes because of my accounting background, right? Where, and maybe I'll dive into that in a second. I think it certainly helped me. This is coming from a financial person. You know, I still have a license.
I asked the question, yeah.
Yeah, I still have a CPA license. I keep it active. And, you know, I value financial literacy and knowledge. I think it's super helpful. I do think that it's possible to become overwhelmed and too into the weeds of finances that prevents you from being able to run a business. And what I mean by that is, like, you know, you take your customer acquisition costs. Let's take, for example, your marketing costs. And let's say it's like, you know, just sub $100 or below $100. Like, is that really going to change much how you operate your business if it was like, say, $150, $200, $250? You probably still are going to run a lot of leads, you know, to try to get as many leads from that as possible. But what sense does it really make for you to know your customer acquisition cost? And I'm sure a lot of finance guys will shoot me for this. Like, it's important to know like what your return on investment is. But if people are like, hey, you got to know your numbers, I don't really care if my customer acquisition costs 100 or 200. I'm still just going to run as many freaking leads as I possibly can because it's cheaper than door to door, right? Like, that's how I think about it.
Yeah, right. Agreed.
I'm trying to max that thing out.
I'm I'm going to push as much budget to the inside sales team as absolutely
Yeah.
possible.
And I think door to door is a great sign of that. You look at what commissions have done in the last 4 or 5
Crazy.
years, and they're still doing it, right? They're still doing door to door. So what would have known for me to think about, and I've lost a lot of guys because I was trying to be cheap, or not cheap, but trying to, be competitive within the space. And here it is that now, like, I would pay those rates all day long, if rates that I said no to. You know what I'm saying? So I think you can shoot yourself in the foot too, but there's a lot of benefit of knowing your strategy, right? Door to door guys have a certain strategy. Non-door to door guys have a different strategy. It can be really helpful just to have an idea before you execute on what you're going to do, to understand it, right? The other thing for me was process driven. So you understand sort of lead and lagging indicators. For example, you look at your finances, and if you want to move a lever somewhere, you've got to say, okay, well, what's going to drive gross profit up? What are the list of things that are going to do that? Whether it's route density, targeting certain areas to be more efficient, be more efficient on time, reducing your retention, or you're reducing your attrition rates, right? Like, those are some of those indicators that you need to be monitoring before you're going to see it impact the P&L. And then you can even just trace that all the way through all your activities, and then try to take the activities you're working on and try to measure it against it. So for example, for us, this customer experience standpoint, customer experience is hard to measure. You can do NPS scores, but it's always like, okay, who's filling those out? There's things that we pay out for now. Just, we're so focused on retention right now and improving our retention that, like, that's, you can say, what other numbers I'm concerned about? Retention's like it right now, the biggest one that I care about, because I'm focused so much on that customer experience, and trying to create that value for customers to see.
Yeah, because as you know, the fastest way to scale is door to door. Hands down, most expensive too, but it's not always the best customer. And if that customer is sold in the doors, the odds of them getting switched over by cheaper prices, because it's the same customer profile, is probably pretty good. And it's just not as sticky as account that comes to the office.
Yeah, no, and those door to door guys are good
Very good. They're so good
at maximizing and minimizing what they do versus what you do, right? And so if your customers aren't trained to know what you're doing, then it doesn't matter what kind of service you're providing if they don't know about it. And pest controls kind of can be that kind of service, right? Where it's like, hey, you really don't know what you got. You're selling something absent of, right? If there's no bugs. Well, what other value are you delivering is important for your customers to know. I was just gonna say, like, going back to this book, I had our leadership team read this Excellent Wins book, and I think it was kind of hard at first for us to sort of connect pest control to his industry, which was the hospitality industry. And so we kind of came up with this concept within customer complaints, right? If you think about when you show up at a hotel room, like, typically think about what you do, right? The first thing you do is you kind of walk the room, right? You may walk out on the balcony, look around, then you come into the bathroom, check it out, and make sure everything's sort of in order, right? And we have, like, sort of this identifier, we call it like leaky faucets or dirty bathtubs, right? Because there's things that will go wrong in your business, and how do you categorize them? And so we've done the same thing. This is just recent, so why it's the top of my mind right now. If you imagine you're in that hotel room and the faucet you see is kind of dripping, right? There's a few things that you want to have as a customer that this author talks about, is that, all people want, they want a product or a service without defects. They want something that's delivered timely to them. And they want to deal with people that are kind, that are nice people, right? That are nice to them. Well, you obviously found a defect in the service that's being offered. And so you might make a phone call to the front desk and say, hey, there's a leaky faucet that needs to be fixed. And what are they going to do? They're going to send somebody up, and they want it to done timely, right? And you're going to be pretty forgiving in that situation. They come, they fix it. Okay, all is in order. 5-star review still could be left, right? Well, what happens when you go into that room, you walk the bathroom, and you look at the bathtub, and that thing is just filthy, like no one's even cleaned it, right? You're going to have a different experience as a customer. Now you've lost trust with the hotel staff. You're now going to question, hey, are there other things in the room that they didn't even fix or clean up that are now causing problems? Like, did they even wash the sheets? So you're going to start looking around and trying to find other defects. And so how you respond to those different concerns that happen, those issues that happen in your business, are extremely important, right? So for us, let's think about some examples that happen where we get leaky faucets. For us, like, let's say bad weather, right? We may think, well, that's not our fault. We don't drive the weather. We can't control it. And that's true, but it's still a leaky faucet in your customer's eyes. A flat tire, still leaky faucet, right? You're going to have to, hey, we can't get to you today, but we're going to have to get to you soon. So they want to have a service response quickly. But imagine another situation where you service the home and the technician stepped through the mud and crawled, walked all over their front porch. Or somebody spilled their fogger fuel in the truck and it dripped all over their driveway and it left some marks. Or you have another technician who pulled into the driveway in a winter storm and got stuck, right? None of these are real examples, by the way. I'm just kidding. They are all real examples for us. And so that's why we track those, right? So those to us are dirty bathtub situations. And we have to respond to those a bit differently. By what we typically do is we send hey, I'm really sorry that this happened card. And then we also discount their service. We give them a credit. And then we send them, in those cases, we'll send them like $100 gift card. Try to really bend over backwards to make that situation better, because we recognize that. And I think we had a hard time recognizing that as a team. And so that's what we've been changing. And sorry to go on that tangent, but it was just something that's on the mind right now because of the position that I'm shifting into.
Yeah, that's cool. So, and then for the, from a financial standpoint of paying guys more now, maybe your views have changed a little bit. You said you're willing to pay those. How does you as an accounting guy justify those numbers?
For door to door?
Yeah, for door to door. How do you look at it as from a financial?
I think we still try to be competitive. I definitely think that you have to either change strategy, meaning that you either have to find folks that aren't going to be in this Piranha Fest sort of / Heart of Utah, like, competing at the highest dollar. I do think that a door-to-door company has higher margins than a non-door-to-door company because they have higher route density. And so they can justify paying those higher costs, particularly because they know that they're getting accounts that are going to be close together. So it justifies for some of that higher cost. But you have to be prepared to say, hey, what are we building for? Are we building for an exit? And so that might be a little bit more driving your decision to pay those higher rates. It might be something, hey, we're going to do this for a little bit, and then we're going to use a pull strategy to then grab more customer bases by getting our trucks driving around. So you think about your business, for example, you have great branding. Early on, like when we were designing our trucks, by the way, like we had like 4 trucks, and one of them was like a bright pink, sort of T-Mobile looking colored truck.
Oh, yeah.
And we were going to call it Eek or something, but we went with Mint. This was like back in 2018. So I get your branding, it makes a lot of sense. And you're just like, hey, well, more trucks driving around, you're going to get more phone calls. And it might make sense for you to parachute into a market, use door-to-door to drive a lot of customer base into that. And then, as you know, once you get a customer base, you can start really going to work. And so I think that's another tool. So you got to just figure out how you use door to door to your best advantage as well. Just depending on what your strategy is.
Love it. And then I always take notes, but I had Mint written down, circled. Where did you come up with the name? Was it Ryan Reynolds?
No, it wasn't Ryan. I think we came up with it before we even knew about
I think so
Mint
too.
Mobile.
I think so too.
I don't know when Mint Mobile came onto the scene, but we came up with it. I actually do credit, my friend listens to this. I do credit to Pineapple. Pineapple was just a really cool image that I saw. And so I was trying to like figure out a name that sort of, when I messaged my business partner now, Mitch, he's like, hey, there's like 2 conditions that for naming. He's like, we can't name it eco something, we can't name it green whatever, right? And not to discredit anybody else with those type of names, but we still wanted to give that sort of natural feeling, fresh vibe. And there's been some others that have come out with that name now since. Unfortunately, it's not like an easy name to trademark or anything. But there's been some other companies that have taken the name in their markets as well. But yeah, that was kind of our knee jerk for them drawing. We had a designer draft a truck, and so when I approached Mitch, all I had was like a truck and a picture of a truck and a smile, and I just say, hey dude, like come start a company with me.
That's awesome. He said, let's go.
Yeah. So I still say to this day I'm the best salesman in our
because you recruited him.
No, I got him. Yeah.
Yeah. And then so walk me through the next 3 locations. Like how did those happen? What was your thought process around opening those next 3 markets? And did you learn anything through those?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So the first one, the second year we started Indianapolis, and that came for a few reasons. One, we retained our first year guys into our second year. So we knew that we were going to start growing. And it was Mitch's dad had seen what we started. And he was somebody that I knew through church as well, was actually pretty high ranked in the church calling and had a lot of business experience as well. And I think he was interested in joining, and he said, hey, I would love to come out. I'll be your branch manager. I'll start this thing with you. And he was somebody that we trusted to do that. And so he's brought a lot of skill, a lot of operational knowledge, at least from like business. And so that's where I went. I moved to Indianapolis for the summer and knocked there with the first year team. And we did fairly well. And ran those 2 branches for a few years. And then our Ohio branches were branches that we opened up last year. We had just gotten to a big enough space. I think we probably had close to like 80 to 100 door knockers at the time. And so we kind of like needed more markets to kind of expand and open up. And we certainly had some, I don't know, like some soft fail launches in those markets too. Some of our guys, like, I don't know, I won't bore you with the nuance in those disagreements, but they started knocking like just poor areas of, just poor performing areas. And it kind of hurt us a little bit, and it obviously hurt them too, unfortunately, because we had a lot of cancellations in those markets. And I think they had a hard time trying to get going. And so you lost some reps. And so we've really scaled down. We probably have more like 30 today knocking and trying to build up those branches. And now we're just using a lot of like our phone support to capture in some of our legacy branches. So we're going to start running more ads and stuff like that.
Cool. Love that. And then what are some of the biggest lessons you've learned, maybe opening branch 2 and then branch 3 and branch 4? Do you wish you would have waited? Do you think that you guys did the right thing? Anything like that?
Yeah, no, I think we did the right thing. Branch 2 came quickly, but I thought it was a good move. 3 or 4 just came last year. So we've been in business 5 or 6 years. So we did wait quite a bit to open both of those. Maybe we would have opened up just one instead of both, just knowing what we know now. I definitely think that people tend to over spread out too quickly and branch out. But if they have the right model, like, you take somebody like yourself, Jonas, I think you have a cool model where, if you're either partnering with people or opening up, areas in smaller locations, and you can just open up a bunch of those. I don't know if all your locations have like brick and mortar, spaces or not, or if you're just able to do it in a, really sort of low cost way. You can, right?
The less overhead, the better.
Yeah, minimize the overhead. If you can open up locations with little overhead, it's still a great model. And then also, some of the mistakes I made early on was because I mortgaged my house, like I basically just refinanced it into buying trucks and stuff. And I bought used trucks because I was trying to be cheap. And I don't know if I would do that again. I would, we'd like to get new trucks that we tend to run for a long time, make us a lot of money, finance them, pay them off in 4 or 5 years. And then, we own the trucks, right? Like that's typically what we've done. And if we have to sort of lease a few during the summer, we will. I think we've run it really smart. If I were to do some things differently, yes, I would have taken some bigger risk. I would have done whatever I could to keep some of these legacy guys that have built $15 million teams. Like that would have been awesome.
But for a lot of guys that are listening to this, like they go put on $15 million in revenue. It's probably going to cost you $15 million that year. How do you support that?
How do I support that?
Yeah, how would you support that? Would you go raise money? What would you do? You said you do whatever it takes. So
yeah, I mean, this was probably a few years ago, so it wouldn't have cost me 15 million. So I would have done that then. But I've talked to some of those owners of those companies that do it, and they still operate at a decent margin, even at that high of acquisition on their costs. Obviously, if you don't have some book of business, I think that makes it a little harder, right? If you're starting right out of the gate to go put on 15 million and you need 15 million, yeah, you better go raise some money. You better raise a lot of money. For us, yeah, it would be a conversation to say, hey, like we're probably not going to pay ourselves very much. We're gonna invest in growth, and we're willing to do things like that. But in this case, it's more of a profit year, I guess, for us because our team sort of shrunk down. Yeah, like you can't complain. You're either growing or you're making money, so it's like it's a good business, right?
yeah, although because you don't want to go the opposite way.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't want to not make any money, and you don't want to not grow. So
Yeah, exactly. So no, I mean, if you didn't have anything, then yes, you're going to have to find money somewhere to pay these guys, and financing would be one. The other two is just restructuring the terms to sort of extend out payments as long as possible would be the other thing. But you've really got to figure out a way to manage your cash flow and have some sort of cash forecast for it.
yeah, do you still run back end model?
Yeah, we've done a few things, but we have kind of a traditional back end model, and then we also can extend stuff out for sort of longer
Yeah, I love that.
payments.
Yeah, he's got to make it work, right? There's so many ways to skin this cat, and whatever you can get your guys to get on board with, more power to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's so many things that people hear, you see, and they do, and just like there's things that I wouldn't do. Like just
Yeah.
say
And
that. You know what I'm talking
yeah,
about.
and honestly, there's things that that were doing that I'm now doing that I thought like I probably wouldn't do. Like we're doing some more inside sales this year. We're doing a lot more termites and exclusion type work. I didn't think we'd ever be an exclusion type business,
High
right?
cash,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. And we'll probably do more we'll probably get into attic insulation here soon. And I didn't think that would be us, probably we didn't think we'd probably be in commercial. We're getting a lot more commercial recently. So I don't know. I mean, there's things to do at the right time, the right place, right time. And to your point, yeah, there's a lot of different ways to do this. I mean, I've been shocked, man, just to see like some of these guys grow without door-to-door teams that are growing really well. Like it's impressive. That's impressive, right? Those are the guys to interview because those are the guys that are like, have a lot to say. And so I don't know that we're able to mimic that because we kind of play to our strengths, but I definitely admire it for sure.
For sure. What's the goal with Mint? Like, what's the next 3 to 5 years look like for you guys?
Like we're probably I don't know that we'll like be like $100 million company or anything. I don't know. That's our goal. I can see us exiting at some point in our lives. We're trying to run it as though we aren't. Um, if it depends on what comes along, you know, if the right partner came along and they said, "Hey, let's, you know, let's introduce an equity model," then that could change our strategy, right? Um, we're in growth mode still. We're trying to grow as much as we can, and when we can't because of unforeseen reasons, then we take some profits, right? And so we're both in like we're in all our partners in a good financial situation to just continue to keep this thing growing. And I think we'll consistently be in growth mode for as long as we can and as much as we possibly can. That's kind of our strategy.
That's really cool. And you already mentioned a few books. Any other good books that you recommend to the listeners?
I've been on like a business book break a little bit, and I've been reading a lot more. I don't know what kind of books you call them, like intellectual sort of style books, but you know, I definitely think everyone should read this Excellent Wins book that I just described. It's an easy read, and I think it resonates, and I think it would change a lot of people's perception of how to do customer experience in the industry, and actually I think be great overall. One of the books I read recently that's really stuck with me, and I think it's probably everyone in the country needs to read, is called The Righteous Mind. It's probably a 20-year-old book or so by Jonathan Haidt. And, you know, it's a little bit more, you know, I wouldn't say it's a difficult read, but it's a little bit more challenging in the sense that it's more science-based. This guy's a moral psychologist and really talks about why people tend to agree or disagree and sort of create tribalism within religion and politics. And so if you feel like you're a conservative or liberal and you fall on one side and you just can't understand why the other person thinks the way that they do, this is a book for you, right? And I think it really opened up my mind and say, hey, here's the people that disagree with me and think differently. How can I see where they're coming from? And that was really fantastic, phenomenal for me to read and just make me think differently. And then I said the last one that I read that recently is kind of an anthropology book, deep read. One of those books that will make you like think you're the dumbest person, because the way this guy writes is doesn't waste a single word when he's writing. And it's a thicker book. It's called Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. And it will make you question your whole life almost. Like it's a huge anthropology book, and it just kind of describes us as people. And I think, you know, in a lot of ways, business is about people. And if you could understand people, you're gonna do well at this thing. And I don't know, there's some concepts in there that I thought were really just made me second guess a lot of our social interactions and you know, how we operate as a human species. And so I think that book was really eye-opening for me.
It's awesome. Are you a ChatGPT guy? You Grok? What do you use over there?
I've been using ChatGPT you mean for like AI tools?
Yeah.
I use my tools are Midjourney, ChatGPT. Yeah, and I think I'm gonna probably look into Claude. Everyone's talking about it.
I use Claude all day, every day. It's like
Really?
I've been using ChatGPT for years.
Okay.
I stuck in ChatGPT because it had all my history until I found out you can download your history and export it and upload it into Claude. So it has all your information. Now that I'm in Claude, it's like a bad addiction.
So you have to sell me on it. Is it you use it mostly for business or for just
Yeah, mostly for business. It's just cool. Like you can have it like open up a window in Google Chrome. It can deep dive into your CRM. Dude, it's incredible.
Really? Okay. I'm gonna mess around with it.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. I got my CFO on it, I got my COO on it, and
Wow.
it's a great tool.
Are they using it within spreadsheets and stuff too, or are they using it? Okay, that's awesome.
Amazing, dude. Yeah, I mean, just like tell what to do, pull all the information, export it into Google Drive or Excel spreadsheet. Dude, it's incredible.
I know our head of marketing or our president of marketing, he's been using it for some of his marketing tools. And he's like, dude, I really think I can scale myself and like multiply my efforts. And I'm like,
Agreed. It's just going to make each person that much more powerful.
Love it.
Yeah. Last question for you. Let me jump off here. It's already been an hour and a half, which is crazy because it doesn't feel like it. We usually said try to keep these 45 minutes to an hour when we just keep chatting. What are you most proud of?
I guess I'll keep it personal and in business in general. Like, for me, I go back to sitting in my car just thinking, hey, nobody's going to come rescue me sort of thing. And then now where we're at today, it was funny because Alan Draper got up on stage at Bud Bucks Con and kind of described an emotional experience where he was talking about starting his own company, Proof, and talking to his wife about it. And it sort of resonated with me having the same conversations with my wife. And honestly, I didn't get quite the, hey, yes, let's go do it as much as he probably did. For me, my wife was kind of already living her dream as, she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. She was taking care of 4 kids at the time. But to be able to come together and make that decision and for her to support me in that, like, still means a lot. And so, as you know, like when you have to go to sort of look around a room and say, hey, we're going to go do this thing and then actually go do it, it means that much more. Right. And I say that like we're successful or something, but the reality is like we're still doing it. And I really enjoy what I do right now.
Me too.
I love coming to work. I'm having a blast, right? And I'm still doing a lot of the same stuff I did even as an accountant, right? In some ways. But I'm like, this is my dream job, man. This is like, if I did this for the rest of my life, I still would be pretty happy about it. And now get to make like a decent living. This is pretty nice. So there's a lot of flexibility. There's a lot of tools that you can go explore. There's like, you feel like you're growing something. We as humans love to create things. Creating businesses just feels like a sort of a creational appendage to what we do. And so I'm really proud of like, just what my wife and I've sort of built as a family, what my business partner and I built as a business, what the employees that we have, our sales guys, the family that my wife and I built together, like, just building, creating and growing, like, it's just so awesome, man. I love it. The relationships that we sort of get to create in this industry, I didn't think that was even a thing. I didn't even have any idea that was going to be a thing when we started. You guys haven't even started your podcast by the time that we started Pest Control. So now that you guys have that, there's just a much better community you're creating that I love to see you guys grow in. And so it's just been an awesome, I'm just really proud of the creative liberties that we have in these positions.
Me too. It's so awesome. All right, man. Well, you're a stud. I love watching what you guys are doing. It's going to be fun to watch your journey for the next couple of years. Watch you guys go on. But you guys are in a really fantastic run. Only going to continue to get bigger. So thanks for spending the time with us. Great getting to know you and look forward to chat with you more in the future.
Okay. Thanks, Jonas.
See you, bro. Hey guys, thanks for listening to another episode of Pest Control Millionaire. We don't charge any money for the show, but the podcast isn't free. Please like and subscribe and give us a 5-star review in your favorite podcast app. This makes a huge difference for us. If you have any specific questions about your business or your personal life that you'd like answered by me or any of my podcast guests, please send an email to info@pestcontrolmillionaire.com. And if you want to get in touch with me about our marketing class, we do a live version every Thursday night. Check out our website at pestcontrolmillionaires.com. Thank you guys for listening. I'll see you guys in the next one.